Call to order on the City of Norco City Council meeting agenda study session on Wednesday, April 4th at 4 p.m. Roll call, please.
Council members Newton.
Here.
Hannah.
Yes.
Bash.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Grunmeyer.
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman.
Yes.
All present.
Pledge of Allegiance by Councilmember Kevin Bash.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, this is our City Council discussion item, and from what the City Manager tells me, this is going to be a high-charged and fully impacted meeting. So, all right, Andy, it's all yours.
Has a lot of impact.
Big impact.
I'd like to acknowledge the hard work of Michael Rios, who is our WRCOG Fellow, for that work he's done in terms of putting this presentation together. I believe the infographics as well as the visuals that he has put together will help everybody in terms of a better understanding the items that we are going to talk about this evening. And with that, before I go into the presentation, I do like to make a couple of introductory comments. First of all, what we intend to achieve this evening with this presentation. Our goal is to take a long-term financial outlook of our general fund, as well as some of our selected capital projects fund, those capital projects fund that fund governmental type infrastructure. There are two reasons why we're doing that. Number one is our goal ultimately is to achieve long-term financial sustainability. And the reason we do that is to make sure that we have the ability on a long-term basis to continue to provide the current level of services and perhaps improve the level of services we provide to our residents. Secondly, is the need to fund our infrastructure. We've been having the discussion on this for a long time, and infrastructure is essential to maintaining our Norco lifestyle as well as maintaining the quality of life in the city of Norco. As far as this presentation goes, the discussion this evening is going to be very high level. It's going to focus on the big picture, precisely where our money comes as far as the general fund is concerned, where we spend that money on, and we'll do the same thing for our capital projects. In doing that, we want to make sure that the reason why we want to focus on the big picture is to make sure that we don't get this discussion bogged down into details. First week in May, we'll be having a budget presentation, our regular annual operating budget as well as capital budgets to discuss. We can, at that particular time, talk about the detailed line items with respect to revenues and expenditures in the budget. So with that, I'm going to go into the presentation. The first thing we want to take a look here is sort of like City Municipal Finance 101 with respect to general fund. And that is, what is the general fund and where does it get its money? That's, of course, speaking about the revenue side of the general fund. Everyone here knows the general fund is where we budget for the the main services that the city provides as a local government, whether it be public safety services as well as general and administrative services, parks and recs, park maintenance, building maintenance, our animal control, legal fees pertaining to general administration of the city, and essential governmental type services. The water and sewer funds are separate, and as a matter of fact, most cities don't have those. But these are the items that government are in existence to provide to their residents. Again, continuing with that 101 general fund principles, here the sources of revenues that go into the general fund. Every one of this is self-explanatory, and we'll look at them a little bit more in details as we proceed with the presentation. There is a reason we put this information out here, and is one of the slides that we have been sharing in our community outreach. This deals with a property tax distribution in the city of Norco. A lot of residents wonder why the city doesn't get a lot of money into the general fund when all of these property tax revenues are generated within the city. But the reality is that a very small portion of property tax that is generated in the city goes to the city's general fund. Approximately, this is based on FY 2016-2017 data, approximately $30 million in property tax was generated in the entire city of Norco, based on the assessed value of real properties that are in the city. Of that amount, $1.6 million in FY 2016-2017 went into the city's general fund. The rest of this pie chart shows how the remaining portion of that property tax revenues that are collected in the city are distributed. As you can see, the school districts has the lion's share of that property tax, about 36%. That is followed by county general fund, which gets about 24%. That is similar to the 24% that goes into what used to be the redevelopment agency, but is now the successor agency. And these $7.3 million currently goes towards the payment of the bonds that were issued by the redevelopment agency prior to the agency being dissolved. There are other special districts that also share, including the community college district, that share in the distribution of property tax revenues in the city. So again, our objective is to take a 10-year we're taking a 10-year lookout, future forecast for the general fund. And as you can see, this is what we are projecting for the next 10 years for the general fund. That includes, of course, fiscal year 2017-2018, which is the current fiscal year. And that year is, of course, not complete. So we are still treating this current fiscal year as an estimate. Over the last 6 years, the property tax in the city has been growing at about 3%. Okay, and that is what we are basing our future projection for the next 10 years is a 3% annual growth, and hopefully we don't go into a major issue with the real estate market like we did several years ago that resulted in significant sales tax, which is a big source of revenue to the general fund. We also have this chart here based on FY 2016, 2017 numbers that we use as part of our community outreach engagement. This shows how the entire sales tax that is collected in the city of Norco is distributed. Obviously, we do the work to generate this sales tax, and in fiscal year 2016-2017, approximately $50 million in sales tax was generated citywide, and this is how that money is distributed, with the city's general fund receiving about $6.5 million, or 13% of the total. 50 million. If you add all those numbers, I think they total close to $50 million being generated in the city. Again, the state gets the largest chunk of that, almost a little over 51, although the state's share has somewhat decreased with the sales tax at the state level that was dropped, I believe, at the beginning of calendar year 2018. So again, we show this. We would like to show this to folks so that they know of all the sales tax that is generated in the city, how much of it actually comes into the city's general fund. But in terms of our projection of sales tax revenue, which is the biggest chunk of revenue that goes into the general fund, the numbers we are projecting are based on these following assumptions. Over the last 6 years, coming out from the recession, sales tax has grown at a rate of 8.5% in the city of Norco. However, based on what we are looking at today for fiscal year 2017-2018, and going forward, we don't think the 8.5% is realistic. Keep in mind that in the middle of the recession, when the Great Recession hit, we went from a $6.2 million in sales tax revenue to the general fund to $3.3 million. So that's how well we have come, and that certainly we don't think is a realistic percentage to use for purposes of for doing a long-term projection. If you look where we've gone from that $6.2 million where we were pre-recession to what we are projecting now, that is actually translates into an annual growth of about 2%, and that's what we are using to do our the 10-year average over the last 10 years has been about 1.5. However, we are looking at a 2.0% annual growth going forward over the next 10 years. Some of the other taxes that we get in the general fund is our business license tax, which is a tax we charge for the right to conduct business here in the city of Norco. There is a document transfer tax. This is a tax that is charged on real estate transactions, transfer of real estate properties, and that tax, I believe, is levied at the rate of $500 per each $100,000 of value that is exchanged. Additional taxes come to us through the public safety's half-cent sales tax. In terms of what we are projecting, again, for this particular category of revenue, public safety, business license, and transfer tax, we are using a 2% annual growth to make our projection for the next 10 years. Motor vehicle license fees. This is the fees for registration of motor vehicles, the right to operate vehicles in the state. I know Councilmember Bash always talks about how lucky the city is. This is actually one of those revenue that the city, because of what the state did in 2004, actually got very lucky. So prior to 2004, when the state did the triple flip, this revenue used to be entirely allocated based on per capita population. Okay. When the state needed to deal with their budget issues, they did this triple flip then, where they swapped out this motor vehicle license fees and backfilled it with property tax. As a result of that change they made, they began to allocate this revenue bucket based on the assessed value of properties in each city. And with the city, even though we are 27,000 people in population, on a per capita basis based on assessed value, we are much higher than the state. Meaning the value of real estate on a per capita basis here in the city of Norco is much higher than the average for the state. And as a result of that, our allocation of funds of motor vehicle fees actually jumped quite a bit beginning in 2004 and has grown at a good pace since then. So in terms of where we are, what we are projecting, again, this revenue, as I stated earlier, the allocation formula is based on assessed value of real properties, and of course, the amount of money to be allocated depends on the actual collections by the Department of Motor Vehicles. Recently, this revenue is growing at 3% annually, but again, we are being fairly conservative with our estimates here, given the level of motor vehicles sales recently. We don't think that number is going to hold up on a long-term basis, and that's why we are using a 2% to project the future, the growth for this on a long-term basis. Franchise fees is another pot of money that goes into the general fund. We generate franchise fees from utility companies for the right to use the public right-of-way to deliver their services here in the city of Norco. The biggest source for us is refuse, which is waste management, and we'll look at that in a moment. We also generate franchise fees from electric company, the gas company, and the cable and video television companies. In terms of franchise fee here, this one, we kind of broke it out into two buckets here. The refuse franchise fee, the City Council approved several rate increases to that franchise rate, and the last phase of that is going to be implemented in fiscal year 2019. And once that increase goes into effect, we are not anticipating any additional increases in this franchise fee revenues from refuse. The reason being, there might be some CPI adjustments to the rates, but again, those are more likely to be offset by decrease in the amount of services that the residents use for waste management services. So again, we're trying to be conservative here, not anticipate any real increases in this revenue. The other franchise fee items, which is the electric, the gas company, and the cable TV company, we are not anticipating any increases. In fact, over the last several years, this revenue category has been going down. As most of you know, the cost of natural gas has gone down, and that therefore the gas company generates less revenue. As far as electric is concerned, those revenues are also going down because of people installing solar panels, and that revenue has been going down. The amount that we collect is based on the actual revenues that are generated by these franchisees. Similarly, TV revenues, we anticipate that to decline. As you know, most people are now doing streaming services such as Netflix and watching videos online. Cable TV revenues are going down. So we don't really have any basis to anticipate that this revenue category is going to go up in the future. Transient occupancy tax, this is a revenue category we've been working very hard to leverage, and those are taxes that are charged on vacationers, tourists, and travelers who actually come into the city to stay on a temporary basis. There are a couple of things at play here in terms of what we are looking to have going forward. Number one is the rebate that we have with Fairfield Inn. When we did that rebate program with Fairfield Inn, we anticipated that it was going to actually take us about 10 years to achieve our numbers, which is a little over $1 million that was going to be rebated back to them. But as we look now, because the hotel has been very, very successful, we believe by the fiscal year 2020, which is about 6 years into that contract, we would have actually met our obligation, and every dollar then that is collected will come directly to the city of Norco. So we've factored that in making our projection. The other thing we have factored in looking at the projections here for TOT revenues is the two hotels that have been approved by the City Council, the Wood Springs as well as the Holiday Inn. If all goes well for purposes of this projection, we're anticipating that those will start generating revenues by fiscal year 2020, and that's why you're seeing the increase here. But once all those things are in place, going forward, we are looking at about 1 to 2% growth rate for once those hotels are built. We haven't factored any new hotels that the City Council has not considered and approved. Those may happen, but we are not going to count anything that we don't know about, at least for purposes of this forecast. We also generate user fees. Those are fees that are generated from those who receive specific services that benefits them. And those fees also go into the general fund. Those are engineering, planning, and building fees. We also have community services, parks, and recreation fees. And of course, the We People program, we classify those as user fees. We have seen a nice growth in these revenue items, especially with respect to planning, building, and engineering fees over the recent years. And based on what we are looking at, this 2017-2018 number is actually the numbers that we looked at mid-year budget. We anticipate again, because the city is nearly built out, and the economy has been very good over the last few years, and which has led into some commercial developments here in the city, as well as residents doing their own home improvements. In the long run, we don't believe that is sustainable, and that's why we are projecting that these revenues are more likely to go down in the future. Again, they are not. It's not a significant source of revenue. In any case, we are looking for those revenues to go down. Again, community services and recreation fees, we are just holding the numbers we have today. We don't have any basis to anticipate that there will be significant changes to those revenue numbers going forward over the next 10 years. The other bucket of revenue here is investment and lease income. This lease income comes from Civil X, sports complex. We generate also revenues from cell sites contracts that we have with different telecommunication companies. And we also generate investment earnings from investing any monies that we have in the general fund that is not currently being used, and that is our fund balance. Again, we have looked at this revenue component and forecasted it based on the various contracts we have. The lease agreement with Civil X has some rate increases in there, and that is being factored in looking at this number. Similarly, we have also looked at our general fund balance, and if things remain the way they are today, obviously those fund balances are projected to go down, and we'll look at that as we go forward here, and that is the primary reason why these revenue categories begins to decline after 2020, 2021. There are some other miscellaneous revenue categories we also generate into the general fund: the voluntary emergency medical subscription program, animal control license fees, and fire inspection fees, annual fire inspection that the fire department provides to businesses in Norco, and then some penalties for late payment of bills. And we put those in this other revenue category. And again, there is nothing in here that's we see as a basis for projecting future increases in revenue for these items. So that revenue is projected to be flat going forward. Fines and penalties. These are fines that are associated with vehicle code violations, which our share of that revenue, parking code enforcement, parking and code enforcement citations. Again, this current fiscal year, our code enforcement revenues have gone up. We don't think that is, hopefully, that doesn't continue. That means as we clean up the city and we issue less citations, the revenue is not going to be growing. Again, not a very significant portion of general fund revenues. Michael did his best here to try to do the infographics on this one. What it is that basically some costs are paid out of the general fund, or what we call overhead costs. For example, the cost of the city manager's office, the city clerk's office, the city council, city attorneys, some general and administrative costs that are paid out of the general fund first. And then through a cost allocation process, those costs are reimbursed. Portions of that cost is reimbursed back to the general fund. And that's what we count here as overhead reimbursement from other funds. Again, that remains steady going forward. We don't see, again, those are not there are no triggers to increase those on an annual basis. So this is what the numbers look like based on the charts that we've looked at. So 2017, 2018, this is our media numbers with respect to revenues, where we are projecting total general fund revenues of $19.3 million approximately. And then I don't know what the number is going to be when we present the budget for fiscal year 2018, 2019. But for purposes of this 10-year forecast, this is what I'm looking at based on the facts on the ground and the assumptions that we've talked about. Again, as a disclaimer, these things are subject to change, but I wouldn't expect these numbers to change significantly. Okay, and that's why I stated at the beginning that we need to pay attention to the big picture here. And again, based on the discussions that I have shown over the last few minutes, is this general fund revenues are not expected to grow significantly over the next 9 years. So we'll go from $19.2 million to $21.7 million. Okay? Any questions on the revenue aspects, the forecast that we've done on the revenue for the general fund before we go into the spending part of the general fund?
What again was the number we generate in total for property tax?
So property tax was about $50 million.
Altogether.
Oh, sales tax, I'm sorry. Property tax, 30 million, sorry about that.
Okay.
I'm glad you guys are paying attention.
And then, what's going on? Public safety, we pay, just to get clear. So we already pay 3.2 million or so, 3.3 million for public safety. What does that go to? We are not looking at expenditures yet. I meant, in other words, but it gets divvied up is what I meant, our sales tax. So in other words, our sales tax comes in, but then it gets allocated to us. We get 6.5 million, but then county public safety gets 3.275.
Yeah, so let me see if I can go back quickly to that.
I think you just missed it.
So this one here.
Yeah.
So the county public safety sales tax, which is a half-cent sales tax.
Right.
Yes, we generate some revenues out of that, and it's included in our forecast on the other taxes. Okay. So this is the total part that the county receives, the 3.275 million.
And do we get anything for that, or is it just generally spread out? Is that what actually pays for the helicopter that comes in?
No, we get direct payment we receive a portion of this from the county. And currently, that number, I don't know, is probably a little over $200,000 annually. Know what that number is? Okay, but we do get a share based on the amount of sales tax that is allocated to the city.
So is that included in the 6.5 million?
No, that is a.
So out of the county public safety, the 3.275,
Right.
we get another $200,000 from that.
That's correct. We'll verify that number before.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, but we actually generate that money.
Yeah, we generate the entire
Right.
sales tax.
So what I'm trying to figure out, because obviously there's something coming down the pike, I'm wondering what we actually get for that. The state general fund, I figure that just gets thrown away. But I'm concerned about county public safety. Just what do we get? You don't have to answer it now. I just kind of want to know. Is that where the helicopter comes from when they have to come in and when they have a special, or is it just a general?
It has nothing to do with that. Yeah, it's not where they pay for the helicopters.
So what is it?
So when the helicopters come in, county
Part of our own direct.
we don't.
The benefit of the sheriff's department as part of the contract rate with each deputy covers the support you would get from the aviation unit.
Okay, so I'm just curious where that money goes. If it's just spread out countywide, we're helping support the county.
So we get our share.
Right,
Goes into the
200,000.
general fund.
But we generate it all, so,
We generate the entire,
right, but we get $200,000 back. And so I guess my question is, maybe I will go offline and I'll ask it
so
later.
the idea is that this is money that is generated, shared countywide, okay? Part of that, there are county programs that 0.5% sales tax pays for, but we do get a share of it.
I guess my point is that we actually, the residents of Norco who generate the sales tax, actually pay a lot more for public safety than what is really being, we pay X number of dollars. I'm not complaining, I'm just saying we're already paying whatever it is we pay for public safety. And then on top of that, we generate another 3.275, of which we get the return of 200,000. I just kind of want to make sure I'm clear on that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It would be
Yeah.
nice if that money, all of it came to the city.
Yeah, because we'd spend it better because we have you. And I guess I have other questions on those. And then my last question, and forgive me, is we're nearing build-out,
Yes.
provided we protect our current zoning.
Well, that's the basis of our projection.
Right, okay, I just want to make sure. And then, sorry, one more question. How much is Silver Lakes paying the lease and the reimbursement agreement?
The reimbursement agreement is totally separate.
Right.
Money doesn't come to the general fund. They are
So right now, how much is the lease payment going for?
providing a repayment of the loan or reimbursement that was.
You can get it for me later if you want.
Yeah, the amount that it comes through for Silver Lakes under the lease is approximately $500,000 annually.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. All right, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You know, Kevin, on that public safety, and Eric and Scott that county public safety includes not only police and fire,
Right.
also includes a lot of other programs that are generally state mandated programs through public safety.
I'm not
I know,
complaining. Don't get me wrong, I'm just making sure, one of the things I want to make sure people understand is how much we generate. I mean, we generate a lot of money in our little
The other
town.
one is the money is 0.5% also goes to RCTC,
Yeah.
which is about 3.2.
Yeah, I know, I'm looking at that, and I'm thinking we need some more buses in town.
Yeah, they pay us back about, what, 690,000 currently of that amount. But the rest goes for RCTC to do their other programs.
Greg, do you have anything going on there?
Any questions on the revenue?
Thanks, Andy. Staying just on that public safety for a second, you have county public safety, and right above it, you have County of Riverside Mental Health, Welfare, Public Safety. Is there a difference between the two public safety pieces of pie?
Unfortunately, I don't think I can explain that. But this is basically the 10 million goes into the general fund to provide mental health related, welfare related issues, whereas the 0.5% public safety is deposited in a separate fund.
Okay. Franchise fees.
Yes.
When is our end date with our current contract with Waste Management? Are we like five into it, or?
So that contract, I want to say it was 2014,
Okay,
so it ends in 24. Yeah.
in '24? And is there a cap on franchise fees
Yes.
by law?
Not by law, but when we negotiated this contract and through the ad hoc committee process, there was a number that I was targeting, which was...
Correct, I remember that. Right.
We settled on achieving that number, which was about $1 million annually, was what we were targeting at the time. And the percentage that we needed to generate that, I believe, was 17-point-something%.
Okay.
And that's, once we reach that, which will be done fiscal year 2019, then that franchise fee rate will remain, because we phased it over a period of time.
Correct, right. And then it'll remain static until 2024, where we'll then go out to bid and we can renegotiate a different franchise fee.
Yeah, with a caveat again that the franchise fee is just simply a pass-through by West Management.
Well, there's another way to do that, too.
Okay.
Last question is on planning and building fees projection.
Yes.
That right now we're at, let's say, $825,000 in collected fees, planning and building.
Yes.
Does that equate to a certain volume? A volume of construction related to fees?
Steve might talk about that, but I think it's based on the volume we have today. And so, given...
And that volume would be what? Do you know offhand? A guesstimate?
Are you talking the number of permits that we issue?
No, dollar volume.
I don't have that right now.
Okay. Total projects related to total fees collected.
The dollar volume of improvements?
Yeah. Because I think that's something we need to look at when we review development fees and that fee schedule.
Yeah, the only problem with that is that, as you're aware, the statute doesn't allow us to charge more than the actual cost of providing the service, so that it's not, we can't simply say we're going to increase development fees. We have to do an annual development fee study and justify the fees based upon our costs.
Well, I guess that's probably why I want to know why it equates to volume.
I mean, I don't know that, again, I'm not quite sure what you mean by volume, but
let me give you how my simple brain works,
I was going to
okay?
give you a simple one. So.
Okay. So I go to the city of Fontana, I have a $11 million project, and I write them a check for $850,000. Okay? Just me. Our total is $825,000 in total fees for a fiscal year. Do we do $11 million worth of volume, or do we greater than or lesser than? You see kind of where I'm going with that?
Although I don't know that there is a one-to-one relationship that way.
Okay.
Because a lot of these small plan check fees that folks come in for their small projects that we collect revenues on, that relationship would exist if you're only talking about major commercial projects, such as the Lewis Norco Village Center, as an example, or a hotel comes in, and then you can sort of try to tie the relationship between the value of improvements to the fees, plan check fees, and inspection fees that are collected on.
Although we can't generate fees based upon that volume. For example, I mean, if there's a commercial project that the cost of it to the developer is $50 million. The only fees that we can charge are based upon the cost of us doing inspections or plan check or whatever, so that we may, in that project, charge ultimately charge 1%. Another project that takes up the same space and requires the same amount of inspections but is worth $10 million, we're still charging the same inspection fees. You might remember that the City of Corona and others, including Murrieta, litigated over residential inspection fees. That because the way cities used to do it is you look at the value of the property and you assess based upon the
cost of
value.
Construction.
And you can't do that. It's against the law.
So you could give me an idea what our total dollar volume was last year or this fiscal year? Thanks. That's all I have, Andy.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions?
Robin, down here.
I just had a couple. Andy, on the successor agency obligations, when are those bonds going to be paid off?
I think the last one gets paid off, I want to say 2032 or 2034. Yeah.
So as those get paid down, then that revenue would then come back to the
Yes,
city,
that's
correct?
it. Some of it, not all of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So once it's all paid off, if it doesn't all come back here, then it's getting divvied up between all the other people again,
All the
correct?
taxing entities.
Okay. And then going back to, I had a similar question as Kevin on the distribution of sales taxes. So the County of Riverside, where all those things are listed, we're basically paying into their general fund for them to disperse.
Yeah, again,
For their programs.
Yeah, state law, unfortunately, is a formula that is used to distribute sales tax.
Okay.
So I think the current sales tax rate in Norco, what is it? 8%, or is it 8.25? Okay, 8%. So out of that, the city tax is 1%. There is, I believe, 6.5% or so that goes to the state. And then these other jurisdictions get their share. 0.5% goes to RCTC, 0.5% goes to the County Public Safety Fund, and there are some other the countywide transportation fund that gets a share. So there is a breakdown that adds up to that total 8%.
Okay, and is there a sunset on the 0.5 cent tax for county public safety, or is it
don't think so.
perpetuity?
There is the RCTC used to have a sunset, but I think that has been extended.
Okay. All right.
Berwin? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Robin? Okay. Berwin? Andy, one of the things that might help us on that breakdown of the county Riverside mental health, welfare, public agency safety, and the county public safety, I'm sure there's a breakdown of where that funds go and how much we get back. I know the mental health is countywide and it's taken, but no matter where you live, you benefit from those services provided by the county health department. So, but if we can get a break, yeah.
Part of our budget work study session.
Okay, just the ins and outs of where that is. I think most of us already have an idea where the transportation and the funds go, unless somebody wants those breakdown. But I think those are pretty self-explanatory. Thank you.
Okay, with that, we're going to go and jump into the other side of general fund, which is where we spend the money. So where does the money we generate in the general fund go? Before I go into that, just a couple of comments, and that is when we do our annual budget, you're used to seeing general fund expenditures by department or program. Okay, there is also a schedule in that budget document that shows it by expenditure type. What we've tried to do with this one here, again, keeping the concept of the big picture, is presented by generally by expenditure type. The reason we do that here is that it allows for these numbers to be easily forecasted because different factors affect different expenditure type. Okay, so for example, pension, there are things that are driving pension and healthcare costs. Okay, and salaries and benefits, there are different factors that are driving those. So I couldn't just put them into one department budget and say we're going to project all those department budget to go up by 3%. I think we'll miss the number quite a bit. So by breaking it down into the way we've done it, we are able to do a little bit more accurate forecasting. And it also helps us to recognize if we were to reduce cost, where do we go, and what impact might that have on ability of the city to provide services, different services. So we'll take a look at that. So here's how we've looked at this: salaries, benefits, pension contributions, medical insurance. These are pay-as-you-go basis for active employees. We have also looked at pay-as-you-go basis for retirees. Then also, we make contributions to do catch-up payment, to set money aside to fund our, that should say UAL, unfunded accrued actuarial liability. Then supplies and services, maintenance and rentals, utilities, police and fire. We know what that is. So they act the same way, so we put that together. Contractual and professional services, and then the funds that we set aside for replacement of our vehicles and computer equipment. And then finally, once in a while, we spend money like we did this current year to do some capital type projects from the general fund. So salaries and benefits. This is what, again, the startup number is the 2017-2018 numbers, our current budget. And looking at that budget, we project that salaries and benefits to increase based on the current staffing levels. This does not anticipate adding additional staff to what we currently have. If we grow those numbers by 3%, this is what we will be looking at between now and the next 10 years. Pension contribution. This is one I'm sure most of you have read a lot about in terms of how this is going to impact a lot of governments. Unfortunately, from city employee perspective, we don't have a lot of employees that those costs are then a little lower, but when you compare it to the amount of money we spend on salaries, the ratio is fairly high, and that's because pension rates are projected to go up significantly. The way these numbers were projected is that we looked at the actuary that was provided to us by California Public Employees Retirement System, and those actuary numbers shows what our rate is for the next coming fiscal year, and what our rates will be for the years up to 2025. Okay, it does again our estimated rates from CalPERS in terms of what we pay for normal costs, which is the ongoing recurring costs for benefits that are currently being accrued by employees, but there is also a huge portion of the pension contribution is unfunded accrued actuarial liability, which is the amount that is needed to catch up the payments that should have been made in many years since the program began, and also to account for the differences between what CalPERS estimates on an annual basis versus what they actually realize from investment earnings, as well as gains and losses from actuarial assumptions. Medical insurance, this is where we are currently today, a little under $450,000. That's our projection for this year for active employees. We did certain things to manage the rate of increases so that the city does not have to absorb the real increases in healthcare costs. And what we did was basically cap the amount that the city contributes towards the health care of every employee at $1,350 on an annual basis. Recently, because there are employees that are still under the cap, overall, this cost has been going up about 6%, but we will get to the cap for most of our active employees. So this projection assumes an additional increase of annual increase of 4%. Medical insurance for retirees. As most of you know, we have more retirees in the city than we actually have active employees. And the cost of health insurance for those retired employees currently about $850,000 for 2017, 2018. This is the actual bill that we receive from CalPERS every month, and we have to actually write check to CalPERS. And at the projected annual growth rate of 4%, that is what our projection is based on. However, using that 4% annual growth, we are capping it at $1 million, and I will explain why we are doing that. The reason is we've been setting some money aside in a trust account since 2009 to catch up for some of the retiree medical insurance cost. I think by the time we are at $1 million, and if the stock market holds up the way it has held up, I think we'll be able to draw money from that trust fund that we have established to make up the difference between the bills we get from CalPERS and the $1 million cap. And we'll look at that a little bit. In addition to the pay-go business we make to CalPERS for active employees and for retirees, we have been setting aside through the general fund over the last several years, $300,000 annually. And we started that fund with $1.9 million. Currently, I think we have close to $8 million in that fund. Is that correct? I think we have close to $8 million in the trust fund as of today. However, like I said, our annual cost to pay annual required contributions that we should be making currently for retirees is about $1.3 million. So once we get to that $1.3 million requirement, we expect to draw about $300,000 annually going forward from that trust fund. So this plan calls for us making the contribution of set aside of $300,000 annually until 2021. And at that point, we will stop. We should have, if everything holds well, should have set aside enough money to make up the difference between the $1 million and whatever the bill is supposed to be. I know that's confusing, but I'll go back and answer questions on that if you need to. Services and supplies, not a big ticket item for us here. That we are projecting annual growth of 3%. That includes office supplies, the amount of money we spend to purchase animal food, and miscellaneous supplies. For this current fiscal year, 2017-2018, that includes about $25,000 one-time cost for our community outreach program. I don't expect that would continue. So we kind of ratcheted down a little bit in 2018, 2019, and then grow that number by 3% annually. Similarly, rentals and maintenance and rentals. This includes amount of money we spend maintaining buildings, grounds, and trail, which is very little on trail. That's another subject we're going to be addressing very soon in this presentation. Currently, spending a little over about $130,000 for these items, and we're anticipating them to grow by 3%. Utilities, the same thing. This includes mainly electric and water utilities for the city as a whole. that is paid out of the general fund. Water and sewer utilities are separate. Those are accounted for in the water and sewer funds. Again, we are looking for those based on where we are today of approximately $650,000 for all those items, two items in particular, to grow at about 3% annually. This is our public safety, fire and police contracts. The key things that we have factored in here, as you know, you currently have approved a dedicated traffic officer as well as one community service officer, which is not filled in the current fiscal year 2017-2018. For purposes of this forecast, we are looking to have that position filled by the beginning of next fiscal year 2018-2019. So a little under $1 million for those two items combined, that is police and fire, for the current fiscal year 2017-2018. This number may change slightly when we do our final numbers for this fiscal year 2017-2018 because we recently received our actual numbers from the Sheriff's Department in terms of how much the cost will be going up this fiscal year. But for purposes of this projection, and this is fairly consistent with long-term history of the rates, we are looking for the rate to increase by about 5%. The only other thing that we have factored in here, consistent with what we talked about in the strategic plan, is in fiscal year 2021, will be also cost for us to add one additional CSO and one additional dedicated traffic officer. If that has been built into this 10-year projection, there are no other staffing changes that is built into this projection, including fire. That assumes we maintain fire services at the current level. Contractual and professional services, this is where we pay for the city attorney, legal costs, other consultants, park maintenance, building maintenance, and crossing guard. Again, stepping up from where we are this current fiscal year, there are some one-time costs that is in the 2017-2018 that we bring down in 2018-2019, and then we are growing the number by 3%. Internal service funds, we set money aside to pay for vehicle replacement. We set money aside to pay for computer equipment replacement and telephone replacement and things of that nature. We also pay money into self-insurance programs that we do to cover our general liability and workers' comp insurance. Those costs paid out of the general fund is what we are forecasting here, even though they go into the internal service fund. And we are looking for those costs to grow by about 3% annually. This is the result of that from expenditure perspective. Again, our stepping up point is the 2017-2018 budget. And again, this number should correspond to what we have at mid-year for this 2017-2018. And if you look at the items that we've talked about, and then based on the assumptions that we made, this general fund numbers will grow from approximately $20.4 million to about $28.8 million in 2026-2027. And of course, you can see where the big ticket items are. There's no doubt there you're looking at public safety, and that even with a minimal adjustment in terms of the level of service that is provided, and just growing those costs by 5%, will go from about $10 million to a little under $17 million for the next 9 years. Again, employee salaries and benefits, you see where that number is approximately $4 million. And the pension cost, it gets to the pension cost. The good thing, again, is that we don't have a lot of employees, but if you look at that number relative to the amount of money we spend for salaries, it's almost 50%. So the net result of all of this is, what does that mean in terms of our ability to balance the budget? Looking at the revenue numbers we provided previously, and this expenditures number, again, this is the deficit we projected at mid-year. Again, that number will change somewhat by the time we close the books for fiscal year 2017-2018. But again, in the context of the big picture, is not going to change the conclusions that these numbers, what these numbers are telling us going forward. And as you can see, because our expenditures are growing by about 3%, and the big ticket item growing by 5%, what you're going to see here is this deficit that is projected to grow over time. If we leave everything as is. Of course, we can talk about, as part of the budget process, we'll certainly look at options in terms of what can be done. So, we are not in a fiscal crisis as far as the general fund is concerned. Let me just make that statement. But on a long-term basis, the numbers don't look good. That is clear from this picture. And again, we have tried to use the most reasonable basis to project these numbers. This is what the numbers are telling us. In the normal operating conditions, that currently we do have $10 million in fund balance in the general fund. But if these projections hold true and we don't do anything significantly to alter the direction here, this will be the result by 2027 fiscal year. Again, just the rate of our expenditure growth is anticipated to outgrow the rate of our revenue growth, and all of that flushes out of the out of our fund balance.
Andy, do we have
with that, I can take questions on this now.
Let me and
we'll go to infrastructure.
This is just general fund, correct?
This is just general fund. We're going to look at our infrastructure.
Okay, all right. Where want to start down there?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Andy, on the page with the internal service fund charges, it said includes contributions for equipment maintenance,
yes,
replacement, all that. Does that include that, what, $15,000 a year we put away for a fire truck, or what, 25? How much?
For replacement of vehicle, yes, it is. It doesn't. Actually, no, it doesn't. The $51,000 that we pay for replacement of fire trucks, we are drawing it from money that we already have on hand to replace fire trucks when we had those fire trucks. So we had accumulated some monies to pay for those. So we are using the monies from that to pay for that. So we are not estimating additional $51,000 every year for those two trucks.
So it don't come on this one?
No.
Here, does that include the maintenance on the cars that everybody drives around here and
Every car that the city has that is funded by the general fund.
animal control trucks and
Control trucks, parks and rec trucks, all of those vehicles.
okay, and another one, I can't remember where it's at right here. Oh, maintenance and rentals.
Yes.
All right, it includes building, grounds, trail, and equipment rentals and the maintenance. Does this include the damage to that pole barn that we just had by that horse trailer going under there? Is that come out of this fund right here? Or?
That was an unanticipated expenditure that we haven't paid for that yet, Brian, I'm sure.
But I mean, will it come out of this fund?
It comes out of here, but we file a claim. So when the claim reimburses the city, then it'll show up on the revenue side in regards to what we had to correct on that particular situation.
Okay, so you did file a claim against that person that
Yes, we did.
tried to remodel it.
Don't have a check yet, but we did file a claim.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you, sir.
Robin?
Andy, I have a couple questions for you. On salaries and benefits with the increases, does that factor in all the step increases or a certain percentage of folks getting new certifications or moving up?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
So what we have a current MOU with employees that expires at the end of next fiscal year. That is being calculated in here, and that's generally about 3%.
Okay.
And we are using the same 3% on a go-forward basis. But the actual contracts will still need to be negotiated and agreed to.
Okay. And then my next question is on the medical insurance for the retirees. Because I don't know a whole lot on the CalPERS side, the city pays for their medical insurance for life?
For those that are currently on there, yes.
Wow, okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
Down here, Kevin?
We will solve it. It's amazing how much money we have no control of. In terms of the medical insurance, Robin, in 2005, if you worked 5 years, you got lifetime medical. And that was one of the first things that we got rid of. Now there's a STEP program, but I don't know how many of those people are still around, that lifetime medical.
I don't know what the role is, but I believe we have close to 60, if not more.
Yeah. Anyway, no, you guys have, we just have to find more money, I guess, or figure out a way to get the county to cut loose some of the money they're taking from us.
Greg?
I think I'm more concerned that the state might take some more money away from us than us receiving money back.
Greg?
On the revenue side, previously, you talked under franchise fees that gas, electric, and specifically I'm kind of looking at those, franchise revenues are trending downward.
Right.
But then on expenditures, our utilities are going up.
Yeah, so the actual cost for what you use is going up. The question is, and for us, unless we close facilities and do things, if you're going to demand the same level of services, it will go up. Brian and I have been talking about alternative energy programs for the city that we are looking at, which is what most homeowners are doing. And if we are successful in implementing something like that, that might reduce our cost eventually.
And that's where I was going, that if we see this on some commercial projects and a lot of residential projects going to solar, that maybe we should be looking at that with our utilities trending upwards. And are there grants available?
There's actually several programs out there. There's grants, rebates, and all that. And we're actually working with a couple different companies right now to do a study, and then we would bring that back to select one of those companies that would do it. There's also financing that's available. And one of the thoughts is some of that financing that would be done can be paid back through those rebates that you would get from Edison or the state or federal government, percentages of that. In the CIP program, we could look at maybe paying some of that back. What you're doing is, what it helps us is get some of that infrastructure in that reduces some of our overhead, but also replaces infrastructure that needs to be replaced as well. So
we have some pretty big rooftops that could accommodate a lot of solar panels.
And the big issue is the state's Title 24 requirements now. So now we're subject to anything we touch to meeting Title 24. So the timing's pretty good on us looking at that.
Okay. So looking at the long term, that it seems the biggest chunk of that increase, approximately about $6 million of that, is public safety.
And we are not richly staffed at this point. We are, so that is certainly something to put into consideration. What level of services do we want for police and fire services? We only have 2 stations for fire, and as this projection is based on that, the only increases anticipated on the sheriff's side is when we add the 2 dedicated traffic officers and then the 2 CSO officers. That is what is driving the numbers, and the 5% annual increase is what historically the numbers have been. I look back 10 years, and those numbers are about 4.9% increase.
Yeah, I took the 5 as being conservative. Okay. What are you two going to do about it?
It's not within their control.
Okay, good. Good answer.
Retire. Yeah. Andy, I have.
Thank you, Andy.
I have a go. I know you put this out the 10-year on your expenditures and your salaries. Do you think that's a realistic thing to not increase staff over a 10-year period? Or are we going to see some staff increases somewhere?
Well, we're trying to get by, but we have to be realistic in terms of our financial picture. I wouldn't be recommending staffing increases under the financial picture that we are looking at.
Okay. So I'm just saying that because I know we do with a lot of part-timers and that. And
that's how part of the things that we've done to reduce cost. And we're going to be actually looking at that on the next slide.
Okay. All right. So you're looking at that. And then, and to answer some of the lifetime medical questions, since most of us are PERS, which I am a PERS retiree, I can tell you what, at 65, they make you go to Medi-Cal. So, and we go to, our guys at 65, our employees go to Medi-Cal, correct?
But they don't.
They don't Medicare, I'm sorry, Medicare.
Medicare, that's not the plan we have. However.
You still pay their percentage of it, correct?
However, what happens is under the contract, healthcare contract with CalPERS, when you get to 65, Medicare rates kicks in.
Correct.
That is the insurance premium for Medicare receivers, but the city still pays for that premium.
A percentage, depending on how many percentage.
No, unless it exceeds the 1,350, 1,350. As long as it's within that amount, the city picks it up.
But isn't it dependent on years?
That is a vesting schedule.
A vesting
That's
schedule.
something that we implemented in 2004.
Right.
That would apply to those employees that were employed after 2004. And that would depend on their.
So like, to use me as an example, I kick into the Screen Actors Guild when I'm 65. They will pay the entire amount, whatever Medicare doesn't pay. Whereas if I went by the city, I'd get like $100, $150. So obviously I'll switch to Screen Actors Guild at that point.
Yeah, because I have to pay my own premium. I retire from the county, and it's $400 every quarter. But so I want clarification for people that at 65, they do go on to Medicare, so it's not, even though we pay for it. Okay. And then, and I guess Greg asked the question, if the 5% increase was realistic or not for public safety, the increase every year. I mean, you've looked at 7% before, but they've always come back down, correct?
So, for example, this current fiscal year, we just got the rate to 6.65%, okay? And for next year, I think they are telling us to look at 6 to 7%, is that correct? So that's the numbers we've got. But historically, yeah, those numbers have been, the actual rates are lower. And I looked, and they provided us the history going back, I believe, 12, 13 years. And the average has been around 5%.
But we have to take in consideration the new mindset up at the Board of Supervisors that increase may go up.
Yeah, they're looking at different things to shift some costs to contract cities. Again, we don't know how that would impact the future rates.
I think your projections are decent with the 5%, but we may see even those go up higher or additional charges for particular items that we get through the Sheriff's Department also. The old thing, the nickel and dime us till they make their payments. And but now you had a traffic officer there a couple of years, and so that would be in addition to the current one that we have under budget. So you'd
That's
want.
correct. I did include that in the projection for 2020.
Okay.
2021.
That's fair. Okay. Anybody else have anything? All right, moving right along, Andy.
Just a recap of some of the things we've done in the past to reduce expenditures in the general fund. We have contracted out a lot of services as far as engineering staff. We used to have an in-house city engineer and assistant city engineer, and we had a lot more staff in for plan check. We used to have our own housekeeper, and some of these things have been gone away, and we have contracts. There was a period of time there we froze salaries for employees in order to address our fiscal constraints. Of course, the big one is we contracted our fire and emergency medical services. We implemented a 4-day work week. Believe it, the 4-day work week was actually implemented to reduce city employee salaries, and it went in conjunction with the salary freezes. So when we implemented the 4-day work week, was employees were going to be paid, and are still paid on 36-hour work week instead of 40 weeks. And even though we didn't take any pay from the employees at the time, they agreed to not receive pay increases for the next 3 years or up to 10%. So cumulative over time, that is actually saving us monies. And when we do salary surveys where we compare ourselves to other cities, we base our compensation on that 36-hour work week. So we discount the comparison by 10%. Again, we used to have more public safety services, police officers, motorcycle officers. All of you remember we had 3 motorcycle officers here in the city. That went away, and I wonder how much that will be costing us today. It's a ton of money, and that's how we have actually generated some savings. We limited contribution the city makes for medical insurance, as I stated earlier, to $1,350. The city used to pick up everything. We increased employees' contribution to pension. Every employee in the city now pays their own portion of the pension, which is 8%. Okay, city used to pay all of that before. We implemented, this is what Councilmember Bash was talking about, implemented a retiree medical insurance vesting schedule where if you come to the city and just work one day, provided you have 5 years in PERS service, you get lifetime medical from the city of Norco. That's no longer the case. You need to have worked for 10 years in the system, at least 5 of which must must be with the city of Norco, and then you start accruing medical insurance benefits at a rate. So we don't no longer pick up just by you just coming here and working for a few months or a few years, pick up the entire amount. On the revenue side, we've, again, have been doing a lot of things to generate more revenues to the city. Unfortunately, the options are getting smaller and smaller. Sales tax growth, we've done plenty of new retail establishment here, and that has helped us recapture some of the monies we lost as a result of automobile sales being low in the Great Recession years. We are certainly way above where we were at that particular time. Increase in reimbursement for overhead, so we have updated our cost allocation process, and that's resulted in some additional money to the general fund. Sales site revenues, Brian and his group, we are very aggressive and in negotiating for those revenues, and that's helped the city. We have made significant gains in bed tax with the Hampton Inn and the Fairfield Inn. These are establishments we didn't previously have. That is the greatest area in terms of percentage that we have done a lot of work and improved our revenue there, and that we're still looking to capitalize on. The refuse franchise fees, as I said earlier, part of that contract negotiation was we wanted to generate $1 million from that revenue. We are very close to that now. And certainly a significant amount of money coming from the lease of the 122 acres to Civilex. With that, we want to go into infrastructure. And so I'm going to take the lead here, provide a quick, big picture perspective of what our infrastructure looks like. First thing we want to take a look at is our streets. As all of you know, we did go through the ad hoc process 3 years ago, and as part of that process, we actually implemented a pavement management system. And that pavement management system essentially tracks the pavement condition index of city streets and tells us how the condition of each city streets. A lot of the numbers we are looking at here is based on information that is coming from that system. So for streets, if we are to meet, say, a 70% and above pavement condition index, okay, for the next 20 years, we took a 20-year outlook here for the capital projects funds. The first year expenditure for streets is about $2.8 million. That's what we will need on a first year. But given the time value of money and that the costs go up, on the average about 3% annually, over 20 years, the average we need to be spending in future costs is about $3.8 million, or a total of $76 million. I think when we did the infrastructure ad hoc committee, that number was a little smaller, but because we haven't kept up this deferred maintenance and replacement, that this number is going up. So that is the situation with our streets. And again, what are the monies coming in to currently address these needs of streets? Currently, Measure A, we talked about that the money that comes from our CTC, the sales tax that is allocated to them. Currently, that's what we receive is about $679,000 is what we are projecting for fiscal year 2018-2019. This is based on information provided to us by RCTC. And if those numbers grow by their growth factor, this is RCTC's growth factor, is about 2.5%. Over a 20-year period, that number will average about $867,000 annually, or $17.3 million in 20 years. The other one, and this source of money to do street walk for the city, is the recently approved SB1. This current fiscal year 2017-18, I think we are looking to get about $185,000, and this is based on information from the League of California Cities. In 2018-19, we are expected to get about $480,000 out of that fund, based on an anticipated growth factor of about 2.5%. They have provided the numbers to us for the first 10 years. But using those numbers and increasing it by a factor of 2.5%, that is how much we are expected to get on the average, and the total amount we could expect to receive from SB1 funding. Keep in mind, there are forces out there that are looking to repeal this SB1 legislation. We don't know how that is going to happen. So if that actually happens, obviously it's going to make our situation worse than what is being showed on this schedule. So in total, we are projecting to take in revenues next year, $1.15 million for street walk. On the average, over a 20-year period, including the time value of money is about $1.9 million. So that leaves us a gap in funding of $1.7 million 2018-2019, and on an annual basis, $1.9 million or $38 million over a 20-year period for streets. Any question on that before we go to the next infrastructure category?
Merwin, any questions? Nothing? Robert? Kevin? No. Greg, anything? Okay. All right. Go ahead, Andy.
Okay. So the next category we look at is our trails, which is the pride of Norco. Everybody knows what that looks like currently. And we've made several assumptions here in terms of costing out what is going to take us to convert our soft shoulder trails to bridle trails. Currently, based on $2.50 per square foot, including 30% cost for design and construction management and inspection. We're looking to spend on average $338,000 annually to add vinyl trail fencing. That will cost us about $289,000 annually on the average. And also, once we convert those soft shoulders, the number 2 assumes that we are adding adding fencing to 39.2 miles of trails at a cost of $16 per square foot, including cost of removal. And again, that includes cost for design, construction management, and inspection. Once we build the trail system, we would have about 39 miles of bridle trails, and then converting the soft shoulder will add additional mileage to the trail system. Bottom line here is that we are looking, if we want to maintain the trail to the standards that have been recently approved by the City Council, and including converting converting the soft shoulder trails to actual bridle trails, we're going to need to be spending about $800,000 on the average. The first year cost is a little higher because of some one-time costs that we have to incur, especially to do to maintain the bridle trail, to bring them up to acceptable standard. Chad, anything you'd like to add here?
Just for clarification, so when it comes to converting soft shoulder trails, this is just an assumption that over 20 years we would make an effort to improve those trails to get to a bridle trail. I fully recognize some of those will never get to that scale, and we didn't take the time right now to identify which ones probably wouldn't get there. We just made an assumption that we'd have that effort, and that would be the level of maintenance of effort. As far as adding vinyl trail fencing, that's the assumption currently right now of all the areas that currently don't have fencing. Over 20 years, we'll get to put vinyl fencing everywhere along an existing trail segment. And then the bridle trail maintenance and labor, that is to maintain what we currently have right now going forward. And that larger number at the beginning is to bring that up to the minimum standard level of what a bridle trail should be. And then that's why you see our cost after that are leveled off, because then it's the cheaper actual maintenance because we brought it up. A lot of our bridle trails, especially in the southern portion of the city, aren't up to the current standards, so they have to be brought up a little bit so that after that point you can maintain them easier every year versus keeping them at the standard that they're at. So that's why there's an initial one-time jump and then it levels off after that. And then the soft shoulder trail maintenance, again, and this is all based off of what our standard that you recently approved in our trail maintenance master plan, is that each of these has a different maintenance level. So the soft shoulder maintenance is really touching a soft shoulder trail once every 3 years. And it's really just leveling it, make it safe, compacting it, and that's really it. So it's a lot cheaper as far as what we're doing there versus a bridle trail.
Anybody have any questions, staff?
Sure. I guess this, Chad, I'm assuming you put these numbers together?
Yes, sir.
All right, so on your soft trail, not including fencing, an upgrade, you have it $2.50 a square foot, and on a standard 12-foot wide trail, that works out to $30 a lineal foot. And out of that 30, you're assuming a 30% cost for design and construction management and inspection, so $10 out of that $30 is to design putting DG down on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, we kept a consistent assumption when we were talking about designing the streets on the previous slide and this, as far as, again, it's a conservative estimate as far as what it costs. We want to be consistent on what we came up with, and we've carried that forward here.
Okay, so I'll make the comment that I think that's a little more than conservative. I think is an extremely high number. And then on number 2, you say on assume adding fencing, you have fencing at $16 per square foot. Fencing costs run on a lineal foot, not a square foot.
Oh, sorry. It should be linear.
So if that's a square foot, then that number's extremely whacked.
No, it is linear foot, sorry.
Okay. And $4, based on your 30%, $4 out of that $16 is to design a standard. We have a standard for fencing, 2 rail.
No, you
have design construction management, which would be $4 out of that $16 to design the fencing and manage the installation?
No, it's actually more than that. And that the way I maybe wrote this is a little deceiving. The actual price is our recent price that we got from doing the LMD trail fencing. It was basically $16 to remove and install the new fencing. On top of that, which is again not showing the calculations, we add 30% for design and construction management and inspection. So the actual costs that make up number 2 it's actually higher than $16.
Okay, but it said it included.
And I apologize. It's
okay.
It's meant to. It's another. Yeah, and it's just yes, it's my error.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else?
Okay, we have one more slide. I'm going to actually let Brian, this one infrastructure category, which is our parks and building and parking lots. Brian?
Yeah, thank you. This particular slide actually projects out facilities over 20 years for capital improvement for the George Ingalls Equestrian Event Center, which includes the completion of the master plan. Public buildings, this includes both fire and sheriff's department, and park facilities.
Oh, sorry about that.
The challenge here when we look at public facilities or buildings is that, unlike the previous slides, it's not a consistent pattern of what you're going to spend annually. Those costs are based on an assessment of when that asset needs to be replaced or renovation. When we originally did our capital improvement infrastructure review and we looked at those at all assets and their improvement, the goal was to extend the life of the asset for at least 50 years. That's basically what the government standard is to have that asset last 50 years. And then you're looking at replacement. At the midway point, at 20 or 25 years, we're looking at major renovation or improvements to those facilities to continue to extend that asset. Along that way, we may be doing improvements to those things infrastructurally to continue it. For example, an air conditioning life expectancy is somewhere between 10 and 15 years. So we would be looking at that chart. If we replaced it year one, we would be replacing it somewhere within 10 to 15 years. And so this particular makeup identifies those particular things. I added into our capital improvement program ADA. One of the things that we have to do now is to show what our capital improvement will be and have some sort of identified numbers for ADA. What I've added in that first year is also to revise the transition plan and our estimates. So that's part of that process in that first year. That is required under Title 24. So pretty much what we end up doing is looking at total parks and public facilities needs in the first year of about $7.9 million, and at the end of that 20-year cycle, about $45.5 million would be spent in public assets through the CIP. And what we looked at that as an average, although it's not consistent, 2.2 million per year, because one year you may spend a little less, but then in the next 2 years you're going to spend a little bit more because that particular part of that infrastructure comes due. So I can answer any questions you have. And included in that, we have used a calculator for construction and design as well. All of our numbers that we put together, both Chad and I, also identify an inflation rate, and we used about 3% increase over the 20-year period.
Council, any questions? Berwin? Robin? Greg?
When we do maintenance on facilities, whether it's in the park, public buildings, park facilities, are we required to pay prevailing wage?
And I'll let maybe John might want to chime in. When we do it, then no. But if we contract out and it's maintenance, then it is. If it's, and I'll let John chime in, if it's new, then yes, we do.
Yep.
However,
it's replacement with new. Is it, and I guess I'm going to say it the same with the trail infrastructure. We have to find a way to skin the cat on these infrastructure needs to get away from the prevailing wage.
Right. One of the things we look at, Greg, is that if I, for example, maintenance, let's use our landscape maintenance contractor. That falls in the code differently. That's maintenance, it's non-prevailing. However, if I'm going to build the infrastructure or new, then it slides over to prevailing wage.
Yeah. It's a statutory distinction between the definition of a public works contract and maintenance. And actually, there's definitions both in statute and case law about what maintenance means. For example, if you resurface a road, if you keep it within a certain inch of surface, that it's maintenance. If you exceed it, it's replacement, and there's a public works project, and you have to bid it and all those other things.
And where originally we thought with like the charter, we could relieve ourselves of prevailing wage.
Yeah, we can't, unfortunately, we can't do that. That's what our charter did, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know, I remember.
Recently, just to give you an idea, I had a project, and I actually had called John on it. John, not sure about this one, is it going to fall prevailing wage or not? And we determined that it wouldn't. But I had both numbers, and it was about an 18% difference in cost.
And that's low. I mean, you can be looking up to 30% difference.
Sure.
I mean, most of the discussions I have, those subjects are either with Brian or with Chad, and we try and, to the extent we can, characterize or massage whatever project might be into some way of that prevailing wage does not apply, but there are many things where they're just not the option.
Thank you.
Kevin, anything?
Just an observation. The WRCOG we talked about, there's a study out now that only public employees can afford to buy a house, and that it's very difficult for the private sector right now, and it's frustrating. The prevailing wage thing, that's why we went to the charter, was to try to protect ourselves. And quite honestly, maybe, I mean, the biggest problem is that we in our city generate a huge amount of money that would more than cover our costs, but we don't get to keep it. And I don't know, I know this sounds silly, but I'm from Norco, so we tend to do crazy things. At what point do we start something and say, Sacramento, you've got to give us $1 back, $2 back? I know when you start thinking about what you're going to have to do to meet these obligations and the effort it would take to lobby to do that, lobbying appears to be much more easier than the ways that we have gone about. I mean, I don't think people realize we dug out, Roger, you remember, you were there, Berwin was there, we dug out of a hole that was unbelievable, that we shouldn't have been able to dig out of. Well, now we have one that truthfully is created by Sacramento. It's truthfully created by them. And everybody knows it, and yet we all sit around and go, wow, gee, now we have to figure out a way to make more money. And do you know what? This whole thing could go wonky next year if all of a sudden Sacramento says, hey, we need more money. So I'm just wondering if at some point, and I'll approach the league and WRCOG, and I'm sure all the other cities would chime in, just give us $1 more, $2 more, and we wouldn't have these deficits. Anyway, that's, I don't know, I'm not so certain about the numbers, but like you said, I don't want to get into the weeds on this, and but give me $1 more.
One of the things,
Let me hit Brian on this. Brian, you talked about the hitting the master plan, and this is just something on that. We need to revisit that from the master plan on Ingalls Park. I think we haven't had a meeting in a while, so.
This puts money aside to look at it, but the committee can then, we would need to set what priority.
Right, but we haven't met, so we need to sit and meet.
Right. This particular slide also covers any particular public or what I call health or safety issues, and it covers from parking lots to air conditioning. So it's pretty encompassing of anything and everything related to infrastructure at any public facility.
Okay, I mean, you mentioned master plan, so I'd like to make sure we revisit that. All right, I don't think anybody else has anything. Go ahead, Andy.
Just quickly as an observation, so when we looked at streets, we did have certain monies coming in, at least to help us with that work, even though we still have a significant shortfall. But when we look at this other infrastructure, whether it's trail or public buildings in the parks, there is no money coming in to take care of anything with respect to this item. So we are falling behind on this. With that, I'll go to my next slide. And I think that's what everybody is waiting to hear here is, okay, so we have this issue both on the operating budget as well as the capital improvement budgets for governmental type infrastructure. Specifically, we didn't discuss storm drains because historically we have received money from the flood control district to address those infrastructure needs, and that seems to be working very well. Again, we didn't discuss water or sewer because those have dedicated revenues that are supposed to generate sufficient funding to address the infrastructure needs for those enterprise funds. So what are we going to do about this? It is really requires a hybrid solution, and we'll continue to do what we've done in the past, which is to enhance existing revenues through economic development. But as I pointed out during the discussion here, that option is getting very limited in terms of where we can build and attract any meaningful economic development that will generate meaningful tax revenues to the city of Norco. Reducing for expenditures further. Again, we looked at our structure we have, and there's not a whole lot of choices in that area in terms of what we can do to further reduce these expenditures, but we'll continue to look at expenditure reduction options as part of our budget process. So the big thing then is, which is something we talked about in our strategic plan, and it is we have to find another source of revenue, significant source of revenue that the city controls, and that can go towards our infrastructure needs as well as help make sure that we achieve a long-term financial stability with respect to the operating budget as well. So, which goes to the big elephant in the room, as the mayor described it at his State of the City address, is we need to look at revenue measure. This is not something that is unique to Norco. Most cities do have dedicated local revenues that they generate by some sort of a tax means to help address with this issue. So various revenue measure options that the city could look at, though there is a parcel tax, which would be a tax a tax on the ownership of real property here in Norco. That comes with a lot of disadvantages in terms of impact on property values here in the city of Norco, and also the amount of money that would have to be levied on a per parcel basis, given we only have a limited number of parcels to assess, is going to be significantly high in order to generate any meaningful revenue numbers. Utility users tax, we talked about the fact that some of these utilities revenues are going down, and again would dramatically increase the amount residents pay for their utilities. So there are many cities that have utility users tax, many cities that have parcel tax, and many cities that have a combination of these things. We think, which was something that was recommended by the ad hoc committee, that we need to implement a 1 cent add-on sales tax. The good thing about that is that not only residents of Norco will pay those taxes, those who come here and spend money will contribute quite a bit towards that money, and 1% At the time we looked at this, based on our sales tax generation, last year we generated approximately $4.2 million. It's not a one-for-one, so we wouldn't generate exactly how much we are currently generating on our regular 1 cent sales tax, because there are some differences in terms of how add-on sales tax is applied versus the general sales tax 1%. So that is where we are. And in terms of what we do next, I am recommending that the City Council authorize staff to prepare the necessary documents, resolutions, ordinances, and ballot summary to place a revenue measure on the November 2018 for the residents of Norco to consider approving. This is, again, the magnitude of the issue we are looking at is very high. And again, that's why I encouraged everybody at the beginning of this discussion not to focus on the minutiae or the details as far as these numbers are concerned. Even if we tweak them, and even if we do implement 1 cent sales tax, add-on sales tax, we have to do that in combination with other factors in able to meet our needs over the next 20 years. As part of that process, we will continue our public engagement / outreach, and although we may need to secure professional services to help us as staff to make sure that we can articulate this information as we present them to the public once we decide to do a revenue measure. With that, I will answer any questions that you might have.
Berwin, do you have any questions, staff?
No, I don't have any questions, but that's a good report you guys put together and everything. Appreciate it.
Robin? Greg, get in there.
Andy, just compliments to you and your staff, Gina, and all your staff, and good presentation. A lot of work. Thank you.
Kevin? I reiterate the same thing. Thanks for all the input and the work for you and your staff. And I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm looking at there, and even if we generated, and only because I'm a simple guy, we generate 4.1 million annually in a sales tax on 1%, and we're still sitting in 2023, and that's where our deficit would be, at $4 million. So we need to get going on this so we're not sitting there behind that 8 ball. We need to keep those funds up. So is that going to be sufficient as over 10 years to generate that kind of revenue to keep us sustainable?
Obviously, it will be part of our budget process, but receiving some monies, we certainly are not going to meet all our infrastructure needs as we have presented it based on revenue of $4.2 million or something around that number on an annual basis. We have to, again, we wanted to make sure that everybody understands the picture, but rather than achieving 75 or 80% pavement condition index or having a perfect trail, we will have something that is much better than what we have today. And that is part of the budget priority process that we have to deal with every year once we have some funding.
No, and I appreciate the reality point of it, and that's what you did here. And the one thing is that we have to keep going to try to, even though, whatever revenue measure we take up, we also have to continue progressing in what we're doing along with those new hotels, the TOT, on the other revenue measures too. It's not going to be a quick fix, so people have to understand that. So you need something from us?
Yes, again, creating work for myself and staff and the city attorney is to prepare the documents that we need to present to you to formally take action to have a revenue ballot placed on the November ballot.
Excuse me, Mayor?
I was going to ask him.
Are you asking for direction right now, or are you just, this will come in a public hearing or another agenda?
We will be bringing that information to you to act. Let's just put it that way. That way you don't get boxed in a corner as to whether you, we'll move forward unless you direct us not to even look at this item. We'll move forward and.
So you need a motion to move forward, or you just, okay, do I hear a motion to move forward? You got a first and a second? Go ahead, Kevin.
Just want to be clear that the number one thing that we do as a city is we do public safety. I'm really pleased with the levels and hope we can increase them. But number two is if we don't find a solution, just historically, what will happen is there will be other ways that people will find to make money. And the number one way we're not just saving a lifestyle. Our lifestyle is represented by large lots of empty land. And if we don't find a way to do this, what's going to happen is that eventually there'll be pocket zoning. And so what we're really talking about here is this is a lifestyle choice. What are we protecting? So public safety, and we're protecting a lifestyle. So I will second that motion. Oh, it's already seconded. Sorry.
Any other discussion? Do you want us on a roll call, or do you want to use the machines?
Actually, we'll go ahead and use the machine. If you can please vote. That motion carries unanimously.
Anything else, Sandy?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
With that being a little after 6 o'clock, I adjourn this special study session.